Elden Ring is a good video game. There, that's my review. What more? What else do you want me to say? All right, it's a good game. You think I'm gonna have some kind of brilliant new insight? No, I'm not that smart. All right. If you've played Elden Ring, you know why it's good. And if you haven't played it, then what are you waiting for? You clicked this video, which means you're clearly interested. Just play it. However, while Elden Ring is good, so are most of these. A lot of people played Elden Ring as their first Souls game, but they haven't tried any of the other ones yet. But you should, because most of them are great. So this video is not about Elden Ring. It is instead about every other FromSoftware game.
Chain swinging, clang clang, and it costs a lot. Bitch, I'm always at the guala, yeah, and you are not badass beat. Keep on going till you hit the spot. Whoa, I'm a big bag hunter with the bow. She got a big bed, never drop it low. Mama called me and she happy with the grow. Never ever fall for a party, that's an oath.
So, we're going to start with the non-Dark Souls games, because they tend to be less played and talked about than the other ones, and then we'll move on to the Dark Souls series at the end. Never played it. Don't have a PS3 or a PS5. Heard it's good though. Just got a cool remake, so you know, play it if you want, I guess. Going from the game I haven't played to the game I have played by far the most. Bloodborne is awesome. That's it. It's like my top 2 favorite games of all time. All right, it's that or Wind Waker. Ask me my opinion, it could be either, depends on the day. This is maybe the most mysterious FromSoft game as well. This game only released on one old, outdated console, and it sold well, but not like earth-shatteringly well. So in the grand scheme of things, not many people have even played this game. It certainly gets the talk, though. You've probably seen online, most of the people, it seems, who have played this game will say that it's like the best one, and you might be like, why is that? It can be hard to get an answer out of people who say Bloodborne is the best, because they're either very pretentious, or they're like, ooh, you'll just have to play it for yourself and find out. I'll just tell you, Bloodborne is good because the gameplay is fast, fluid, deep, and it has a bunch of really fun, unique weapons. The art direction is phenomenal, with this, like, Victorian England aesthetic that slowly shifts into full Lovecraftian horror, as both you and the world go completely insane. It has some of the most kick-ass boss fights from any game ever. The soundtrack is an absolute banger, and the story, should you choose to go looking for it, is actually really cool. It's all about the Bergenworth College, searching for a way to achieve immortality by using the blood of literal space gods, and all of the horrible things that happened as a result. This might be the biggest compliment I can actually give this game. I've played Elden Ring like 3 or 4 times now, and I still have no idea what the Erd Tree is, or if it's good or bad. So for Bloodborne to actually get me invested in the lore and the story is very impressive. Sekiro is the game that my opinion has changed the most on over the years. I played it when it came out, and I was like, yeah, it's good. I liked it. 5 years and several playthroughs later, though, I adore this game. I think it's incredible. And it's also not for everybody. A big part of what makes these games so fun for a lot of people is the choices you make and the build diversity. And that is pretty much non-existent in Sekiro. It's relatively linear, and you get to choose between a dex build and a dex build. There's one weapon, there's only a few upgrades, and there's also a story? Like an actual story with cutscenes and dialogue? Yeah. Weirdly. And it's actually not bad either. I'm not going to sit here and say it's The Last of Us or anything, but it's serviceable. What this game absolutely smashes, though, is just the gameplay. If if you like this kind of action, you know, dex build sort of thing, it's incredible. It's this super fun, like, back and forth, parry and counter, almost dance kind of thing that is honestly almost like a rhythm game at points. While the order of the areas is pretty linear, each area is big and beautiful, and you get a grappling hook to traverse them with style and to sneak around and get the drop on your enemies. The boss fights are awesome, as is to be expected in a FromSoft game. I will give you one small warning, though. This game is hard. I think the difficulty of most FromSoft games is kind of overblown a bit, but not this one. Because your options in combat are so limited, they were able to really finely tune the difficulty so that as you get better, the game gets harder at like a nearly perfect rate, which means you are just always getting your butt kicked in this game. All right, it's very hard. I know there are a few like edgy people who are like, "Oh no, Sekiro is super easy, easiest game of all time." Shut up. No, the game is hard. All right. It also has probably the hardest boss fight in the entire series. I won't spoil it, but if you play the game like the normal way, like the final boss that most people would get their first time playing the game, that is probably the boss I have struggled with the most in any, not even FromSoft game, but in any video game ever. And yes, that includes Millennia, before you all waterfowl dance at the comment section. So, Sekiro, very fun, not for everybody. Okay, so that is Sekiro done. I think that's all the standalone games. I guess we can move on to Dark Souls. What's that rumble?
Arena Combat Aptitude Evaluation Program, number 25, rank E. Subject AC, infection. Call sign V6, Materlink. Commencing evaluation. Destroyed. Concluding evaluation. Well done.
Okay, now we can move on to Dark Souls. Dark Souls 1 is a bit of a hard game for me to discuss in this video because, like, what can I say about it that hasn't been said a million times? Every piece of this game has been dissected to its finest components and then studied and analyzed and what have you. And that's not even to mention the enormous, like, cultural impact this game has had. It spawned an entire genre, Souls-likes. It basically rebirthed the 2D Metroidvania, and with it a massive surge of indie games. Without Dark Souls, we don't have Hollow Knight or Dead Cells or Hades. It caused other huge, already established franchises to kind of converge into the Dark Souls singularity, where now even Assassin's Creed is like block parry stamina based combat. I would go as far as to say Dark Souls 1 is the most influential game of the entire 2010s. And yes, I know what you're thinking. Minecraft came out in 2009, so my point stands. It's one of the best and most important games of all time, and it's showing its age a little bit. This game was made on a fairly low budget. It released in 2011 for the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. It's clunky, it's slow, the graphics are... and it's just a lot smaller of a scale than later FromSoft games. Does that mean you should avoid it? Absolutely not. It's still great, you just need to be prepared for what you're getting yourself into. This is a much more methodical game. Less, just run in and hack everything to bits like you can do a lot of the time in later games. You need to move slowly, pay attention to your surroundings, and also manage your attacks very carefully because you have way less stamina in this game. And it's just kind of a different vibe than every game from like Bloodborne onwards. What this game does so well though is the atmosphere. This game is depressing. And not because it like kills a bunch of dogs or something, but it's dark and foggy and everything is dirty, and it gives this mood of this once great world that has long since crumbled away. All the NPCs are dead and ugly and miserable. Even the grand quest that you're given at the beginning of the game, the hook to get you in is to ring a bell. Why are you ringing the bell? Because the sad man in a bonfire told you to. This was my first FromSoft game, and I love it to death. But if you're coming off of Elden Ring, and you want to play the Dark Souls games as well, maybe start with the third one. This game, I can imagine, would be very rough to try to play right after Elden Ring. Just the difference in like technology and the speed of the game would probably be pretty jarring. And if you're worried about like missing out on the story, don't worry, they're not really connected at all. But I'll talk about that more in the Dark Souls 3 bit. But first, I have to talk about Dark Souls 2. Look, biases on the table, I don't like this game. I find it extremely frustrating, and when I'm not frustrated, I'm bored. It took a very surface look at what made Dark Souls 1 without really grasping why those things worked. And then it just said, let's do that. More of that. A lot more of that. People like exploring. Well, the game map is enormous, but it's far more linear, and instead of this sprawling, interconnected ball of spaghetti that is the Dark Souls 1 map, you basically just have a bunch of individual areas with one way in and one way out. People like boss fights. Okay, let's cram 42 boss fights into this game, but 90% of them are just a normal dude in armor. People like difficult gameplay. Well, let's cram every nook and corner with a million trash mobs you can't run past. But if the world is full of annoying and highly damaging enemies you can't run past, wouldn't that make it very annoying if you die in a boss fight? Why, yes. Yes, it would. Luckily, the devs compensated by making most of the boss fights piss easy, so you don't really have to worry about that very much. Look, you have to understand how I play these games, alright? On my first playthrough, I like to take my time and explore and try to figure out the story and whatever, but on all of my subsequent playthroughs, I just run past everything and try to get to the new boss fight, because that's the part of the game that I like. I like hit big boss, a big number. Alright, and this game is like balanced to not do that very much. The difficulty is more in the levels than the boss fight, and it's just not my thing. What else do people like about the first game? Well, how about the beautiful and haunting soundtrack? Well, let's one-up it by making an even more beautiful and artistically stunning soundtrack. Wait, what? Yeah, no, that's one thing I really do have to give this game props for. The soundtrack is remarkable. It's very good. But that's a compliment, all right? I gave it a compliment. Can we move on? That makes me uncomfortable. Okay, back to happy thoughts. Dark Souls 3 is the sequel that Dark Souls 1 deserved. It takes what made Dark Souls great and does all of them bigger, better, and with shiny new graphics. The world is huge and beautiful and full of shortcuts. The gameplay is way smoother than 1 or 2. The bosses are bossier, and this game is genuinely a strong contender for the best music from any game ever. Every track is a masterpiece, I swear to God. So, if this game does everything well, why isn't it your favorite one? Because this game does not have a single original thought in its little head. It's just full of callbacks to the first game. And I don't mean little Easter eggs, little nudge winks. No, I mean characters, weapons, bosses, and even like entire big areas from the first game are brought into this game. And not like in a lazy copy-paste Call of Duty kind of way. They're handmade in a like, hey, remember Dark Souls? You played Dark Souls, right? Gosh, Dark Souls was so cool. Look at this cool thing that was in Dark Souls. You remember that, right? It's almost a bit desperate at times. And it doesn't innovate at all. It just does the things that Dark Souls did well, also well, if that makes sense. That being said, this is probably the game that I replay the most, because it is the most fun of the Dark Souls games. Dark Souls 1 is slow, clunky, and depressing, and 2 makes me want to pull my hair out. But 3 is just a great game all the way through. It also has probably the best average boss quality of any FromSoft game. But one area besides the soundtrack where this game truly shines is the boss fights. My God, they're glorious. While there are a couple fights in other games I think I like more than anything in this game, every boss is good. Like, what's the worst boss in Dark Souls 3? Wolnir? There's no boss in this game that I, dread having to fight again. Whereas in every other game, I think there's at least one that makes me go, ugh. I said it in the Dark Souls 1 section, but I really think this is the best game for someone coming off of Elden Ring, who wants to play other FromSoftware games. Or even, honestly, if you've never played any of the games, this is probably the one I recommend to start with, even more than Elden Ring. It has the nice, smooth gameplay, the boss fights, the music. It does have some of the quirks from the older games that Elden Ring smoothed out, so it, kind of prepares you for those. And through, it's just a really kick-ass action game. There you go. Every FromSoftware game that people care about, at least, mini reviewed. I think Dark Souls 3 is the best for new players, but at the end of the day, do whatever you want. Dark Souls 1 was my first game, and I turned out fine. So, that does it for me. Please subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this video, and I am gonna go play more Elden Ring now, because Shadow of the Erd Tree comes out in a couple days, and I gotta power level some new builds. Goodbye.